So this past week we have seen quite a lot of angry and passionate discourse surrounding the top 200 singers of all time list that Rolling Stone put together. And quite a lot of the discourse has been pretty all over the place. Some of it is certainly justified, I would say that. And then quite a bit of it as well, to match up the balance and keep things all equal, has been a little bit overboard, let's be honest. Some of the discourse has been a bit mad, and I think a lot of the time some of these lists are just destined to get this kind of discord, regardless of how good they could possibly be. But Rolling Stone have been around long enough to know how this game works. If they just put artists in a particular order without really thinking too much about it, put some legends a bit lower down the list, keep a couple of legends off the list, and have some weird placements here and there just to get the internet buzzing around. You know how this works. They certainly know how it works at this point as well. I have a theory, and I've had this theory for quite a while with these Rolling Stone lists, that I think they just basically randomize the order for the most part, and then once you get to like the top 20-ish, they take it more seriously and start thinking, okay, this is going to have to go here, and this is here, and this is here. Maybe even as far as going to the top 10, actually. I remember Cardi B's album getting in the top 20 albums of all time in the hip hop list that they did, which quite obviously isn't that good, is it? Let's not kid ourselves, guys. Come on. But yeah, I think they do that on purpose. I think they get as much out of their lists as they possibly can, because they know how to play this. And look, Michael Jackson being at 86, yes, it's very low down, but they knew what they were doing when they did that. It's basically just 200 singers that they think are great. I don't think the order basically matters, to be honest, but it matters in the sense that they want to create the discourse. They want Ariana Grande stans to go crazy about her being higher than some legends and being in the top 50 of all time. They know how to do this. They know that they need to put a BTS singer in there, despite the fact that there's really no reason why a BTS singer should be on a best singers list of all time list, let's be honest, but you know what they're doing. And overall, I think there were some really cool picks. It was great to see like the likes of Fiona Apple. It was fantastic to see her. I even think Rosalia's inclusion was really good to see as well. I think her range and diversity of vocal usage over the past few albums definitely justifies her on a list like this, really. Of course, when you get higher up, you got to like Marvin Gaye, who has to be on a list like this. He's just an amazing singer. Of course, already mentioned Michael Jackson. Joni Mitchell was on it, you got Bjork on it, you got Kate Bush, who was a bit robbed. I think Kate Bush could easily be in the top 20 all time. I think she would be for me, maybe even top 10, I'm not too sure about that, but if I were to think about it hard enough, she could easily be in my top 10 of all time singers. Of course, then you get to the actual top 10 and you've got Stevie in there, you've got friggin' Al Green in there. The top 10 was pretty stacked, actually. There were some fantastic vocalists in there. Aretha Franklin, of course. Like, so many great picks that you just have to look at and go, yeah, there's no way that this artist couldn't be on this list. However, as I do things on this channel, I do have to kind of voice my reasons for why I think some artists were absolutely shunned, and some amazing singers that you might not know of yourself that I really want to highlight and make a list of my own, just to kind of make you aware of them. Because if you're going to click on this video and you may have never clicked on this channel before, and you're going to get some new singers that you've never heard of before as well, that's kind of what I'm here to do. I'm not here to clickbait people into some stupid shit and put an order ranking that just pisses everyone off. I'm just here to talk about the music, because at the end of the day, that is what we are here for. And no, Celine Dion will not be on this video, so if you are sad about that, click away. So 5 amazing singers that either A, you should know about, and if you don't know about them, then you really need to be knowing about them, or B, 1 or 2, it's singers that should have been on the list that weren't on the list at all. So there you go. That's either way you could take this video. It's a list of artists that are just amazing singers, and it doesn't necessarily matter about the technical ability of the singer, but it's what they do with their voice and how they use it and how they interweave it with the music and how everything comes together in such a great way that makes their voices so important to what they do, the expression, the passion behind their voice and everything like that. This is what this list is about. So I'm going to give you 5 that I think are absolutely worth your time, and if you've never heard them, please listen to them. Pretty obvious one to start with here, Joanna Newsom. I mean, unless I skimmed through the list and missed her name, but I am amazed that she wasn't on this list. And almost in a way that made me think, how can you not? I mean, sure, she hasn't got a huge discography, but neither has Fiona Apple, for example, and she made it on the list too. Rosalia doesn't have a huge discography either, and she made the list. I don't think it's got anything to do with that. But what Joanna Newsom brings to the table is like no other. The otherworldly sounds of her voice, in a lot of ways, kind of are reminiscent at times of someone like a Björk or even a Kate Bush, but the way she transports you to a previous time period in the otherworldly usage of her voice, that just makes you confused and amazed at how she's able to do it, with the instrumentation that she uses over her music as well is always so stunning. Everything just comes together with her music, and I just cannot ignore the fact that she has to be on a list of greatest singers of all time. I feel like I'm, listening to someone from the 1800s, and yet I can't really think of any other singer out there that gives me that kind of feeling. The only thing I would say is that if you really can't get equipped with her voice, or you find it too old-fashioned sounding, then that's fair enough. I wouldn't exactly get mad at you if you thought that. But there is so much beauty to her voice, and the way she sings over harps, it just sounds so elegantly poised, and there's a sprightly sort of feel to her voice as well. She always sounds so peppy and energetic and lively, and I love that about her as well. So for me, this is the first name I'm going to have to say for a list like this, because the fact that she wasn't even on it is insane to me. Yeah, Joanna Newsom. If you've never heard her music before, please go check that out. Next, for me, an obvious pick that I, again, am amazed that wasn't on it, but it depends on what Rolling Stone's general opinion of her is. But Julia Holter, man, another J. We're going with another J, and we're going with Julia Holter. She, to me, still has one of the best album streaks, maybe of all time, but of the 2010s. I think her album run in the 2010s is the best one. I said this once the 2010s had finished as well, and even looking back at that opinion, I still stand by it. I think that run, from even going as far back as Exorcist in 2012, which I think is probably her most underrated album, but that right through to friggin' Aviary is an impeccable run. I mean, within that run is one of the best albums I've still ever heard, with Have You In My Wilderness, and in between all that as well, around it, is fantastic music as well. She is an absolutely one-of-a-kind singer who has just a heavenly voice that is so beautiful, and still, again, I'm showering her with so much praise here, but it's true. Still, if it weren't for the fact that, me saying that she had the best discography of the 2010s, that doesn't make you want to check her out if you haven't already. She is the best live performance I've ever seen, still to this day as well. An amazing voice, with amazing vision with her music, and utilizing her voice the way she does always floors me. And again, if we're looking at singers who just touch a spot, that emotional feel that you get from music, Julia is up there. So Julia Holter is a bit more of a modern artist, as you can probably imagine, but Tori Amos, we're going a bit further back now to the 90s, where she probably had her peak years, but of course she's still making music and is still putting out worthwhile music beyond that, of course. But I think she is mostly remembered for that 90s run. And for me, I think excluding her from a list like this is pretty insane, because I think what she brings to the table in terms of her vocals and how kind of dark she goes at times with her voice, she is a really unique singer in the world of music. And although this is a singer's list we're talking about here, I think bringing up her songwriting and her lyrical style is important to the reason why she would make a list like this, because she tends to sing about really heavy topics, particularly, on her first album. I've already talked about her first album before on this channel, but there are some really, really heavy, detailed, vivid lyrical themes coming through on that album. And one of the things that makes her a fantastic singer is that she can sell these emotions in a way that you don't always get from other singers. I mean, the way she is so striking with the imagery and the lyrics that she comes out with just adds to how powerful her voice is. So that for me is why one of the reasons she has to be mentioned when we're talking about greatest singers of all time, because although songwriting is a separate topic, the way she brings the songwriting into the music and how she sings is so important. And that's one of the main things for talking about singers for me, is how you present the things that you're singing about. And if there's a power and there's an emotional spot that gets hit with how the singer is singing, it's so important. And she is like no other when it comes to that. Fantastic voice, even regardless of all of those things I've just mentioned there anyway. I mean, just listen to songs like, you know, Cornflake Girl or freaking Liquid Diamonds to find that out. She is absolutely stellar. Okay, we're going even further back this time though, and another artist I've talked about on this channel before as well, around a similar time that I did the Tori Amos video, in fact, Laura Nyro. She is the blueprint for many of your favorite artists. And although we look back at maybe perhaps a Kate Bush as being the blueprint, which she definitely is, don't misquote me on that. I'm obviously a massive fan of Kate Bush and she is an absolute legend that has inspired so many. If you want to think about the artist that inspired the legend that is Kate Bush, go back to the 60s and listen to Laura Nyro. Our Laura, she is out here inspiring many to come after her. Laura is the original singer that brings to the table such a sharp, erratic, strange approach with her voice that goes really high at times, and she can really reach into some crazy notes that in a split second she can change from that crazy high note to something completely different. She is all over the place with her voice, and the vocal technical ability that she brings to the table is seriously like not many others out there. So for me, she is on a list like this, one of the best of all time in that sense, but also the way she's inspired so many that came after her as well. An absolute icon in that sense, and some legendary albums too. I mean, freaking hell, so many great albums that run from the 60s through to the 70s. She is phenomenal. And again, an artist that has to be mentioned for a list like this for me, because she's so unique. She brings to the table that you don't, what you don't find in other artists, she brings to the table is what I'm trying to say, basically. And yeah, an absolute sensation of a talent. And yeah, has to be mentioned. And finally, if you're thinking this is a female heavy dominated list, then you are correct, because we end on another woman as well. Susanne Sundfor, we're going back to the modern day, closer to the Julia Holter times of music here. And Susanne Sundfor, I think, just in terms of what, again, she brings to the table in terms of how powerful her voice is and how on point her voice is across all of her albums, she, for me, has to be on a list like this. And she might be different to some of the other names here because she can sing over some really heavy synth pop type music and, you know, perform it so brilliantly, while also taking it to the more elegant sounds of some of the other artists I mentioned on this list, and also friggin' do that really well as well. I think her range is what puts her on a list like this for me, but just so stark and beautiful the moment you hear her sing on any track. I mean, if you want to look at the range of how talented she is and the types of music she sings over, just go as far back as a track like It's All Gone Tomorrow, and then listen to a track like When the Lord, which is one of her more recent tracks, and then go to something like, I don't know, Kamikaze, and see the range of sounds and instrumentation that she can sing over, and each one of them is as worthy as the next because she does every single thing so well. So yeah, for me, that is why she is on a list like this. And goddamn, she's a stunning singer. Like all of these singers I mentioned here, there's just a beauty and a spellbinding quality to all of them that every time I hear them, I'm just wowed. Like, I cannot say anything else but just wow, because of how impactful they are as vocalists. So yeah, that's my 5 picks. That's where I'm going to end it at. I think all of these singers are absolutely brilliant, and they should be on a greatest list of all time for singers, because they are all worthy. And some of these you may have never heard of in your life, but if you haven't, please check them out. They're the main 5 ones I want to mention. I just want to end the video with a couple of extra mentions as well that I think are worthwhile. Well, Nick Cave, for me is the obvious one. I don't know how he wasn't mentioned. I almost was going to put him in the main 5, but I've kept him out of it, but I'm still going to mention him anyway. I think the more recent stuff that he's been putting out, the late career surge he's had with the fantastic music he's put out in the 2010s and beyond that, it certainly has earned him a place. I don't know how he wasn't on it. And also, she probably hasn't quite put out enough music yet, but I think Yola, I think at some point could be more recognised as a singer that should be mentioned when we're looking at lists like this. But perhaps the fact that she's only really got one album that people recognise so far. Her first album's good too, but I think the second album was the one that really put her on the map. And maybe she just needs enough music, you know, more music that justifies her on a list, because perhaps it's not enough yet. But I think later down the line, more people will recognise how much of a powerhouse she is as a singer too. And I'm sure there's plenty more that I could have mentioned, and I'm sorry if I haven't mentioned someone that you wanted me to see. There'll be plenty of obvious ones that I'm sure you're thinking about, and I'm probably agreeing with you as well. So please let me know in the comments what you think of these picks, and if there's any that you think I should have mentioned, because I'd love to see that as well. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Something totally different for what I usually do on this channel. I don't usually pick out lists that people have done and then talk about them, but I think Rolling Stone is just so huge with how much impact they have and how much talk there is for days on end, that it might be fun to do more of these later down the line. Every time they put out a list of their own, I might just do my own mini list and talk about what they've done, because it's fun to do. So if you like this, please let me know if you want to see more. Thank you for watching as always. Do subscribe if you haven't already, and goodbye.